My name is Peter Caldwell. I am 32 years old, and I live in a modest 3-bedroom house in Plano, Texas, just north of Dallas. I work as a senior data analyst at Vanguard Solutions Group. It is not the career I imagined when I was younger, but it is stable. It pays the mortgage, keeps my 6-year-old daughter Virginia fed and clothed, and leaves me enough for her ballet lessons at the Dallas Conservatory on Saturdays. I like my life predictable and safe. No complications, no risks, no room for heartbreak. Or at least that is what I told myself for the last 3 years. My house is nothing fancy. Beige carpet that shows every stain. A dining table covered in Virginia's crayon drawings. And a coffee maker I run twice every morning before the drive down the North Central Expressway to our office at Sterling Heights Corporate Center on McKinney Avenue. I have worked at Vanguard long enough to know every rhythm of that building. The hum of the climate control system on the 24th floor. The click of Janice Reed's heels when she walks past my cubicle at exactly 8:47 a.m. The way she pauses, just for a second, to glance at whatever new drawing Virginia made that I pinned to my wall. Janice is my boss, CEO of the whole company. Everyone calls her the Iron CEO behind her back. Cold, calculating, untouchable in her corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Dallas. I have seen grown men stumble over presentations in front of her, but I have also seen something else. The way she smiles, really smiles, when I mention Virginia got an A on her spelling test. The birthday card she sends to my daughter every year, signed in her own handwriting. The time she personally covered my meetings when Virginia had the flu and I had to leave early. I never thought much about it. Janice Reed was just my boss. Professional, distant, untouchable, until the day I asked her if I looked fine for a date, and everything I thought I knew shattered into 1,000 pieces. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you are tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. It happened on a Thursday evening. I had stayed late finishing a report, and I was running behind for a blind date my sister had set up. I was wearing my casual white t-shirt and dark jeans, nothing special, and I knocked on Janice's door to ask if I looked presentable enough. It was the kind of casual question you ask a colleague, without thinking twice about it. I told her I was running late for a date, and asked if I looked okay. What happened next changed everything. Janice turned from her window, where she had been looking out at the Dallas skyline. The golden hour light was streaming through those massive floor-to-ceiling windows. For the first time in 3 years, I saw something break in her expression. The professional mask she always wore cracked right down the middle. She told me something I never expected to hear. She asked me why I could not see that she loved me. Just like that. 6 words that rewrote my entire understanding of the last 3 years. I did not know what to say. The Iron CEO, the woman who commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals without hesitation, was standing there telling me she loved me, and I froze completely. I could see tears forming in her eyes. Her voice had been quiet, almost a whisper, but every word had hit me with the force of something I was not prepared to handle. I did what cowards do in moments like that. I mumbled something about being late, and I left. I walked out of her office, got in the elevator, and descended from the 24th floor to the lobby. My hands were shaking the entire time. I walked through the Sterling Heights lobby and out into the Dallas evening, but my mind was not on the date waiting for me across town. All I could think about was what Janice had just said. All I could think about was the woman I had just left standing alone in her office. I drove to the restaurant where I was supposed to meet my date. The whole way there, I kept replaying Janice's words in my head. I kept thinking about all the small moments I had ignored. The birthday cards for Virginia. The way Janice always asked about my daughter's ballet recitals. The time she had personally covered my work when Virginia was sick. I had thought she was just being a good boss. I had thought she was just being kind. I had been completely blind to what was actually happening. The drive down to the Adolphus Hotel felt longer than usual. The Dallas traffic seemed heavier. Every red light felt like it lasted an eternity. But the truth was that I was not in a hurry to get there anymore. Something had shifted in those few minutes in Janice's office. Something fundamental had changed in the way I understood my own life. I had been so focused on just surviving, on just getting through each day and making sure Virginia was okay, that I had missed something important happening right in front of me. I thought about the first day I met Janice. It was 3 years ago during my interview for the data analyst position. She had been on the interview panel, and I remember being intimidated by her presence. She asked sharp questions and seemed to see right through any attempt at exaggeration or false confidence. But she had also asked me about Virginia. I had mentioned being a single father in my application, and Janice had asked how I managed the balance between work and parenting. I told her it was hard, but that my daughter was worth any challenge. Janice had nodded and made a note, and I got the job the next week. Looking back now, I could see a pattern I had been too preoccupied to notice before. Janice had always made accommodations for me that other employees did not get. Flexible hours when Virginia had school events, the ability to work from home when my daughter was sick, performance reviews that acknowledged my work quality while also recognizing the challenges I faced as a single parent. I had thought it was just good management. I had thought Janice was simply a CEO who understood that employees had lives outside of work. But maybe it had been something more. Maybe it had been personal all along. When I arrived at the French room in the Adolphus Hotel downtown, I was already late. My date, Michelle, was waiting at the table. She was attractive and well-dressed, and she smiled when she saw me. We ordered food and started talking. She worked in marketing, and she had all the right credentials and said all the right things. Under normal circumstances, I would have been grateful my sister set this up. But these were not normal circumstances. Everything felt wrong from the start. Every time Michelle laughed, I thought about Janice's laugh. Every time Michelle talked about her career, I remembered how Janice had supported mine. The food tasted like nothing. The conversation felt empty. I kept checking my phone, even though there was no reason to. I kept thinking about that corner office on the 24th floor and the woman I had left there. The realization hit me somewhere between the appetizer and the main course. I had been living my life like a man trying not to drown. Ever since Virginia's mother left us when Virginia was just a baby, I had been focused entirely on survival. Get up, go to work, come home, take care of my daughter, repeat. I had convinced myself that this was enough. I had convinced myself that wanting anything more was selfish or dangerous or both. But sitting across from Michelle at that restaurant, I understood something fundamental. I had not been protecting myself from heartbreak. I had been protecting myself from living. And in the process, I had missed what was right in front of me. Janice Reed had been part of my life for 3 years. 3 years of small moments that I had dismissed as professionalism or kindness or coincidence. I thought about the first time I brought Virginia's drawing to work and pinned it to my cubicle wall. Janice had walked by and stopped to look at it. She had asked me about Virginia, and I had told her about my daughter's love of princesses and purple crayons. The next week, Janice had sent Virginia a birthday card with a purple envelope. I had thought it was a nice gesture from a boss who paid attention to her employees. I thought about the time Virginia got sick with the flu, and I had to leave work early 3 days in a row. Most bosses would have been frustrated or at least annoyed. But Janice had personally taken over my client presentations. She had told me to focus on my daughter and not worry about work. When I came back, she had asked how Virginia was feeling before she asked about anything work-related. I thought about all the times Janice had walked past my cubicle and paused to look at Virginia's latest drawing. The way she always remembered details about my daughter's life. The dance recitals, the spelling tests, the lost tooth, the new backpack, things that seemed small but added up to something much bigger when you put them all together. Michelle was still talking about something related to her job, but I had stopped listening. I realized that for 3 years, Janice had been showing me she cared, and I had been too scared or too stupid or too focused on just surviving to see it. She had been there for Virginia and me in ways that went far beyond what any boss would do. She had been building something with us, and I had been completely oblivious. There was the time Janice had stayed late at the office to help me with a particularly difficult analysis that was due the next morning. I had been panicking because Virginia's daycare had called to say my daughter had a slight fever, and I needed to pick her up, but also needed to finish the report. Janice had told me to go get Virginia, and that she would finish the analysis herself. When I protested, she had insisted. She said that Virginia needed her father more than any report needed to be perfect. The next morning, I found a completed analysis on my desk with a note asking how Virginia was feeling. There was the time I mentioned in passing that Virginia wanted to see the Nutcracker Ballet at the Winspire Opera House, but that tickets were expensive and hard to get. 2 weeks later, Janice had given me 3 tickets, saying a client had given them to her, but she could not use them. I had taken Virginia to see the ballet, and my daughter had talked about it for months afterward. Now I wonder if those tickets had really come from a client or if Janice had bought them herself. There was the time I had been short on rent because Virginia needed new shoes and a winter coat, and I had not budgeted well enough. I had been stressed and distracted at work, and Janice had called me into her office. I thought I was in trouble. Instead, she had told me that the company was giving out performance bonuses early that year, and that mine was substantial. The amount had been exactly what I needed to cover rent, and then some. I had been grateful, but I had also wondered why a company would give out bonuses early. Now I suspected there had been no early bonus program. Now I suspected Janice had found a way to help me without making me feel like I was accepting charity. About halfway through the meal, I made a decision. I told Michelle that I had to leave because Virginia's babysitter had called with an emergency. It was a lie, but it was the kind of lie that felt necessary. Michelle was understanding about it. She told me to go take care of my daughter. I paid for the meal quickly and left the restaurant. But I did not drive home to Plano like I told Michelle I would. Instead, I turned my car around and drove back down the North Central Expressway toward McKinney Avenue. I drove back to Sterling Heights Corporate Center. I drove back to find Janice, because sitting in that restaurant had made one thing absolutely clear. Everything I thought I wanted was sitting across that table from me. But everything I actually needed was standing in that office, waiting to see if I would finally open my eyes. The city lights blurred past my windows as I drove. The Dallas skyline looked different somehow, or maybe I was just seeing it differently. I thought about what I would say to Janice when I saw her. I thought about whether she would even still be at the office or whether she had left after I walked out. I thought about whether I had already ruined everything by being blind for so long. But more than anything, I thought about Virginia. My daughter deserved to have a complete family. She deserved to have someone who loved her the way Janice clearly did. And I deserved to stop punishing myself for past failures and start building something new. Something better. Something real. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mom said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to this channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now let's continue. The Sterling Heights Corporate Center was nearly empty when I arrived back at 11 p.m. Most of the offices were dark. The building had that quiet, hollow feeling that commercial buildings get after hours. I took the elevator up to the 24th floor, my heart pounding the entire way up. I did not know if Janice would still be there. I did not know what I would say if she was. I only knew that I had to try. The elevator doors opened, and I walked down the hallway toward her corner office. The lights were still on. Through the glass walls, I could see her sitting at her desk. She was not working. She was just sitting there, staring out at the Dallas skyline through those floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights sparkled below like scattered diamonds. She looked smaller than usual, more vulnerable. The Iron CO mask was completely gone. I walked to her door and knocked softly. She turned and saw me standing there. For a moment, Neither of us moved. Then I walked into her office without waiting for an invitation. I told her something simple and true. I told her that I saw her now, that I finally understood what she had been trying to show me for 3 years. We talked for hours that night, not about quarterly reports or market projections, or any of the things we usually discussed. We talked about real things, important things. I told her about Virginia's mother leaving when Virginia was just 6 months old, how I had been terrified and alone, and had no idea how to be a single father, how I had spent the last 6 years just trying to keep my head above water and make sure my daughter grew up feeling loved and safe. Janice told me about her own fears. She was 38 years old and had spent her entire adult life building her career. She had become the CEO of Vanguard Solutions Group at 35, one of the youngest CEOs in the Dallas tech industry. Everyone respected her. Everyone feared her a little, but she had always felt like something was missing. She had everything she thought she wanted professionally, but her personal life was empty. She told me that meeting me in Virginia had changed something fundamental in her. She had spent 3 years falling in love with both of us, with me, because I was a good man and a devoted father and someone who made her laugh on the rare occasions when she let her guard down. And with Virginia, because my daughter was bright and funny and reminded Janice of everything she had missed by focusing only on her career. Janice admitted that she had been terrified to say anything. She was my boss. There were professional boundaries and power dynamics, and 100 reasons why it was complicated. But more than that, she had been scared that I would reject her, that I would see her confession as inappropriate or unwanted, that I would pull away and she would lose the only real connection she had felt in years. I told her that I had been blind, but that I was not anymore. I told her about sitting in that restaurant with Michelle and realizing that I was in the wrong place with the wrong person. I told her that Virginia and I had a space in our lives, and that space had been empty for 6 years, but maybe it did not have to be empty anymore. We sat there in her office as the Dallas night deepened around us. Through the windows, we could see the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge lit up in the distance. The Reunion Tower glowed against the dark sky. The city felt alive and full of possibility. We talked about what this would mean, the complications with work, the need to be careful and professional in the office, the importance of making sure Virginia was comfortable with any changes. But underneath all the practical concerns, there was something simpler and more important. There were 2 people who had been alone for too long and had finally found each other. There was a little girl who deserved to have someone else love her the way Janice already did. There was a possibility of building something real and lasting and good. Janice told me about her childhood. She had grown up in a small town in East Texas, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a mechanic. She had been a brilliant student, and her parents had sacrificed everything to send her to college and then business school. She had felt enormous pressure to succeed, to justify their sacrifices, to prove that their investment in her had been worthwhile. So she had focused entirely on her career, climbing the corporate ladder faster than anyone expected, making herself indispensable, building the kind of professional reputation that opened doors. But somewhere along the way, she had realized that success felt hollow when you had nobody to share it with. She had relationships that never quite worked out because her career always came first. She had friends who eventually drifted away because she was always too busy for them. She had built an empire, but she lived in it alone. Then she met me during that job interview 3 years ago. She told me that there was something about the way I talked about Virginia, the obvious love and devotion in my voice, that had struck her deeply. She had seen in me something she wanted for herself. Not just romantic love, though that came later, but the sense of having someone who mattered more than work, more than success, more than anything else. She had not planned to fall in love with me. It had happened gradually, over months and years. Every time I mentioned Virginia's latest accomplishment, every time she saw a new drawing on my cubicle wall, every time she noticed how I always left work exactly on time to pick up my daughter from daycare, She had found herself looking forward to those small interactions. She had found herself thinking about me and Virginia when she should have been thinking about quarterly projections and market analysis. I told Janice that I understood now. I told her that I had been so focused on not failing Virginia the way her mother had that I had not allowed myself to see other possibilities. I had thought that keeping my life simple and predictable was the same as keeping Virginia safe. But my daughter deserved more than just safety. She deserved joy and love and a complete family. And so did I. Before I left that night, I made Janice a promise. I told her that I wanted to introduce her to Virginia properly, not as my boss from work, but as someone important to me, someone I wanted in our lives. Janice agreed, though I could see she was nervous about it. She had sent birthday cards and asked about Virginia for years, but she had never actually met my daughter in person. This would be different. This would be real. We decided to wait 2 weeks before arranging the meeting. This would give me time to talk to Virginia about it, to prepare my daughter for the idea that Daddy had met someone special. It would also give us time to think about what this meant and whether we were really ready to take this step. But even as we talked about being careful and taking things slowly, I think we both knew that this was not something we could undecide. We had crossed a line that night, and there was no going back. I brought Janice to our house in Plano on a Saturday morning 2 weeks later. I had talked to Virginia about it beforehand, trying to explain in 6-year-old terms that Daddy's boss was coming to visit and that she was someone special. Virginia had been excited. She remembered the birthday cards and the purple envelope and the nice lady Daddy talked about sometimes. When Janice arrived, she was not wearing her usual work clothes. No power suit. No heels that clicked authoritatively on floors. She was wearing jeans and a simple blouse, and she looked nervous in a way I had never seen her look at work. She was carrying a gift bag, something she had brought for Virginia. Virginia answered the door when Janice knocked. My daughter looked up at her with wide eyes and then broke into a huge smile. She told Janice that she recognized her from a photo I kept on my desk at work. Then Virginia threw her arms around Janice's legs in the unself-conscious way that children do when they decide they like someone. I watched something remarkable happen in that moment. The Iron CEO, the woman who commanded boardrooms and intimidated grown men, completely melted. Janice knelt down to Virginia's level, her eyes filling with tears. She hugged my daughter back, and I could see 3 years of carefully maintained distance and professional boundaries just dissolve. This was what Janice had wanted. This was what she had been hoping for even when she was too scared to say it out loud. Virginia pulled Janice into the house, chattering about her latest ballet recital and her favorite teacher at school and the new book series she was reading. Janice listened to every word with complete attention, asking questions and laughing at Virginia's stories. She opened the gift bag and pulled out a purple journal with a unicorn on the cover. Virginia squealed with delight and immediately started showing Janice all the drawings she had made. The 3 of us spent that whole Saturday together. We made pancakes for breakfast, with Virginia insisting on helping and getting flour everywhere. We went to the Dallas Arboretum and walked through the gardens, Virginia running ahead and then racing back to tell us about every flower she found. We got ice cream at a local shop, and Virginia told Janice all about her ballet class and her best friend Emma and her teacher, Miss Rodriguez. I watched Janice with my daughter throughout the day, and I saw something I had never seen in all our time working together. She was completely unguarded. The professional mask was gone entirely. She was just a woman who was falling in love with a little girl and a little girl's father, and who was allowing herself to hope that maybe this could be real. That first day set the pattern for everything that followed. Janice started coming to our house more often, always on weekends at first, then eventually during the week as well. She helped Virginia with homework. She taught my daughter how to braid hair, something I had never been able to figure out. She read bedtime stories in different voices that made Virginia laugh. She was there for ballet recitals and school plays and all the small moments that matter so much when you are raising a child. Over the next 6 months, Janice became part of our lives in a way that felt natural and right. She came to Virginia's ballet recitals and sat in the audience beaming with pride. She helped with homework and read bedtime stories, and was there for all the small, important moments that make up a childhood. Virginia started calling her Miss Janice at first, but over time it just became Janice, and then eventually something else entirely. At work, we were careful to maintain professional boundaries. Nobody at Vanguard knew we were together, though I suspect some people noticed the way Janice smiled more often or the way I seemed happier. We decided we would eventually tell people, but we wanted to make sure our relationship was solid first. We wanted to make sure Virginia was comfortable with everything before we made it public. Virginia adjusted beautifully to having Janice in her life. My daughter had never known her biological mother, who had left when Virginia was just a baby, so she had no competing loyalties or complicated feelings to navigate. To Virginia, Janice was simply the woman who braided her hair and helped with math homework and showed up to every ballet recital with flowers. She was a woman who loved Virginia completely and unconditionally, and that was all that mattered. 6 months after that night in Janice's office, I asked her to marry me. It was not a grand gesture or a public proposal. It was just the three of us in our living room in Plano, after we had put Virginia to bed. I told Janice that she had become the missing piece of our family, that Virginia, and I loved her, and needed her, and wanted her to stay forever. I gave her a ring and asked if she would marry me. Janice said yes with tears streaming down her face. She told me that she had spent 3 years hoping for this and the last 6 months living it, and that she could not imagine being anywhere else. We decided to tell Virginia the next morning, but Virginia had apparently been listening from her bedroom. She came running out in her pajamas and jumped into Janice's arms, asking if this meant Janice would be her mommy now. We told people at work a few weeks later. There were some raised eyebrows and some concerns about professionalism, but Janice handled it with her usual competence. She made it clear that our relationship would not affect work decisions or create favoritism. She offered to recuse herself from any decisions directly involving my role or compensation. And she reminded everyone that she and I had both been adults capable of making our own choices, and that our relationship was nobody's business but our own. The wedding took place 6 months later at the Nasher Sculpture Center in the Dallas Arts District. It was a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Janice wore a simple white dress, and I wore a suit with that same white t-shirt underneath. The one I had been wearing the day, I asked her if I looked okay for a date. Janice had requested it specifically, calling it my honest shirt. Virginia was our flower girl. She wore a purple dress that matched the purple flowers in Janice's bouquet. As Janice walked down the aisle between the sculptures with the open Texas sky above us, Virginia broke from her position and ran to her. She grabbed Janice's hand and walked her the rest of the way. When they reached the altar where I was standing, Virginia looked up at Janice and said something that made everyone in attendance tear up. She called her mommy. After the ceremony, we took photos in the sculpture garden. The photographer captured Virginia standing between Janice and me, holding both our hands, grinning from ear to ear. That photo sits on our mantle now, a reminder of the day our family became complete. We also took photos with Janice's parents, who had driven up from East Texas for the wedding and who had welcomed Virginia into their family with open arms. The Iron CEO had found something more valuable than any business success or professional achievement. She had found a family who loved her not for what she could do or what she had accomplished, but simply for who she was. And I had learned that sometimes the thing you need most is standing right in front of you, waiting for you to finally open your eyes and see it. Virginia has 2 parents now, a father who would do anything for her, and a mother who chose her and loves her as fiercely as any biological parent could. We live in that same house in Plano, though we have talked about moving somewhere bigger. We still have beige carpet and crayon drawings on the table, and a coffee maker that sounds like it might die any day now. But we also have something I thought we would never have. We have completeness. We have a family. And every morning when I drive down the North Central Expressway towards Sterling Heights Corporate Center, I do not drive alone anymore. Janice comes with me, and we talk about Virginia and work and life and everything in between. And every evening, we drive home together to Plano, where our daughter is waiting for us with new drawings and stories about her day and the kind of love that only children can give. This is the story of how I stopped being blind, how the Iron CEO became the woman who braids my daughter's hair and reads her bedtime stories and makes our house feel like a home, how three people who were living separate, incomplete lives found each other and became whole. It started with a simple question about whether I looked okay for a date. It ended with a family and a love that I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for. And all it took was for me to finally see what had been right in front of me all along. Sometimes I think about that Thursday evening when I knocked on Janice's door and asked if I looked okay. I think about how close I came to missing everything. If my sister had not set up that blind date, I might never have asked Janice that question. If Janice had not been brave enough to tell me the truth, I might have gone on being blind forever. If I had not turned my car around and driven back to Sterling Heights that night, I might have lost my only chance at real happiness. But I did ask that question. Janice did tell me the truth, and I did turn my car around. And now I have a family that feels like a miracle every single day. I have a daughter who is loved by two parents instead of one. I have a wife who makes me laugh and challenges me and supports me in ways I never knew I needed. And I have a life that is so much richer and fuller than the safe, predictable existence I thought I wanted. Virginia is 8 years old now. She does not remember a time before Janice was her mother. When people ask her about her family, she talks about mommy and daddy without any hesitation or qualification. Janice adopted Virginia legally a year after we got married, and my daughter now carries both our last names. She is Virginia Caldwell Reed, and she is the most loved child I have ever known. Janice is still the CEO of Vanguard Solutions Group. She is still brilliant and driven, and occasionally intimidating in professional settings. But she is also the woman who leaves work early to make it to Virginia's school plays. She is the woman who spends Saturday mornings making pancakes and getting flour everywhere. She is a woman who reads bedtime stories in funny voices and braids hair before ballet class and shows up with flowers at every recital. And I am still a data analyst. I still work in my cubicle on the 24th floor with Virginia's drawings pinned to the wall. But now I also get to drive to work with my wife every morning. I get to have lunch with the woman I love. I get to drive home with her every evening to the daughter we both adore. My life is no longer just about surviving. It is about thriving. It is about building something beautiful with people I love. This is our story. This is how a single father, a CEO, and a little girl became a family. It is a story that started with blindness and ended with sight. A story that began with fear and ended with courage. A story that proves sometimes the best things in life are the ones you almost miss because you are too scared to see them. All it takes is one person brave enough to tell the truth, and another person brave enough to finally open their eyes and look. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to this channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. And here's what I need to know. Do you want part 2?